The fortress of knowledge presents the race of my life, the story of Marshall Major Taylor.
I was born on November 26, 1878, in Indianapolis, Indiana, the son of Gilbert and Saffronia Taylor. My parents came from Kentucky, children of people who had once been enslaved. They worked hard to build a better life for our family. My father was a coachman for a wealthy white family named the Southards, and through him, I was introduced to a world far different from our own. One day, the Southards gave me something that would change my life forever, a bicycle. It was shiny and smooth, with the promise of freedom in every turn of the wheels. I was just a boy, but from the moment I climbed onto that seat, I felt like I was flying. Indianapolis was alive with the bicycle craze in those days. Everyone wanted one, and races were popping up all over. I practiced every chance I got, learning tricks, balancing on one wheel, spinning in circles. I used to ride while delivering newspapers before dawn, the wind biting my face, the whole city still asleep. But not everyone liked seeing a young black boy outshining the rest. Some riders refused to race me. Some crowds jeered. Even at that age, I learned that talent alone wouldn't carry me. I'd need faith, patience, and determination. My parents taught me to never return hate for hate, and I carried that lesson with me forever. I didn't know it then, but that bicycle would take me further than I ever dreamed, across oceans, into history books, and through battles far greater than any race I'd ever ride. When I was 13, I got a job at the Hay and Willits bicycle shop in Indianapolis. My boss had an idea to draw a crowd. He dressed me in a soldier's uniform, complete with cap and brass buttons, and told me to perform tricks on my bicycle out front. It worked. People came from blocks away to watch the little Major spin, balance, and salute. From that day on, everyone called me Major. At first, I thought it was just for fun, but over time, the name began to mean something more. A major commands respect. A major shows discipline. I tried to live up to it. I kept myself neat and polite, spoke with dignity, and carried myself like a man on a mission. In those days, the world wasn't kind to someone who looked like me. Racism followed me everywhere, in whispers, in sneers, in rules that said no colored riders. But I found that if I held my head high and rode with excellence, even the most hateful eyes had to take notice. When newspapers started calling me Major Taylor, the name became my armor. It reminded me to stay calm when others lost control, to keep pushing when doors slammed shut. I was no longer just Marshall Taylor from Indianapolis. I was Major Taylor, the soldier on wheels, ready to fight my battles not with fists, but with speed, skill, and faith. I began racing seriously as a teenager. My first big amateur race was in Indianapolis, and to everyone's surprise, except mine, I won. Some folks cheered, but others refused to let me race again. That didn't stop me. I traveled where I could, often sleeping in barns or freight cars, determined to prove that I belonged on any track in America. By 1896, I had turned professional. I was 18 and ready to show the world what I could do. My specialty was the sprint, a short, blistering burst of power that tested everything a man had. I worked on my form, standing tall on the bike instead of crouching low like the others. People said it looked graceful, but it was born from necessity. I had to make every ounce of effort count. In 1899, I became the world champion in the 1-mile sprint at the championships in Montreal. That made me the first black man in the world to hold a cycling world title, and one of the first in any sport. A year later, I won the U.S. National Championship. For a boy from Indianapolis, it felt like a dream come true. Because of those victories, companies began to take notice. I started appearing in advertisements for bicycles, tires, and racing gear. To my knowledge, I became one of the first professional athletes ever to receive a product endorsement, and certainly the first black athlete to do so. My image was printed on posters and postcards across the country. I wasn't just a racer anymore. I was a symbol. I toured Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Crowds chanted my name, and in France, they treated me as an equal, something I rarely experienced back home. Between 1898 and 1901, I broke 7 world records, and though I stood only 5 feet 7 inches tall, I was called the fastest man alive. But no matter how far I rode, I never forgot who I was, a man of faith, a rider with purpose, and a believer that the right spirit could overcome any obstacle. For every medal I won, I paid a price. In America, racism was as real on the racetrack as it was in the streets. Some competitors boxed me in or rammed me off the track. Once, after beating a rival, he choked me unconscious out of pure rage. In some towns, hotels refused me rooms. In others, promoters simply told me, "You can't race here." I could have fought back in anger, but I chose a different path. My faith was my foundation. I carried a Bible with me everywhere and prayed before every race. I refused to compete on Sundays, no matter how much money was offered, because the Lord's day was sacred to me. I learned that my greatest weapon wasn't my legs. It was my composure. If I met hate with dignity, I showed the world that character was stronger than cruelty. I once wrote, "Life is too short for any man to hold bitterness in his heart." I believed that then, and I believe it now. Still, the weight was heavy. There were nights when I felt worn down by it all, the prejudice, the exhaustion, the loneliness. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the children who looked up to me, the ones who saw in my victories a possibility for themselves. I wasn't just racing for me anymore. I was racing for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't. And that, I think, is the true meaning of legacy. It isn't just what you win, it's what you inspire. By 1910, my career had taken me around the world and back again. I had raced against the best and proven that a black man could stand among champions. But the years of strain, travel, and discrimination had worn me down. I retired at 32, proud but tired. I had made good money, but bad investments and poor business advice left me struggling. Endorsements didn't last forever, and opportunities for a man of my color were limited. In 1928, I published my autobiography, The Fastest Bicycle Rider in the World. I hoped it would tell my story honestly, not just the triumphs, but the trials too. I wanted young people to know that success means nothing without integrity. The years that followed were difficult. I moved to Chicago, selling copies of my book on street corners. I lived simply, sometimes alone, but I never lost my faith. I had finished my race with honor. On June 21st, 1932, my time on earth came to an end. I was buried quietly in an unmarked grave, forgotten by many. But God has a way of bringing justice in His time. Years later, cyclists and supporters raised funds to give me a proper resting place. They placed a stone that reads, "World's Champion Bicycle Racer, who came up the hard way without hate in his heart." When I look back now, I don't see sorrow. I see purpose. I see the roads I rode, the hearts I touched, and the doors that opened for others after me. I wasn't perfect, but I never quit. I rode the race God set before me, and I finished it clean. That, to me, was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. May God bless you.